Hey guys, welcome to today's session, Building Winning Coalitions to Advance Policy. I'm Paul Teller, and this is the lovely and talented Sarah Macon.
In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle.
In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
Whether we go forward together with courage or turn back to policies that weakened our economy, diminished our leadership in the world, America's future will be in your hands.
We thought today we'd just kind of go through, as the title implies, how to build coalitions for a purpose. Anyone could just kind of make connections and do nothing with it. We thought we'd talk to you just about how we've done it, best practices, some experiences that we've had, things like that. Maybe we'll even start with just the basics of what coalitions even means, how do you do that at the beginning of an administration, and then move into some maybe a little more detailed strategies or things that we did that we found that worked, things that didn't work, things along those lines. So again, if you're just coming to Washington, never worked in the White House, or you don't even know what coalitions are, what are they, and where do they even exist in the administration? I mean, how would you start with that?
Yeah, I think the first thing to remember is that somebody elected the president and the vice president. And those are people who have, they care about real issues, and they very well are part of these coalitions, whether it's the pro-life movement, the Second Amendment folks, our first freedoms, religious liberty, or so there's groups of people that make a real impact, who are vocal and who could be the reason that you win or lose again in the future. And it's really important to remain humble and remember that whenever you're talking about building these coalitions. So the way I always looked at them is that these are average, everyday people who matter and are they're going to be the reason why you win or lose in the future. Making sure that you keep them in the loop is tremendously valuable and important.
Yeah, and if you're, again, just starting, maybe you haven't done anything like this before, but you're interested in people and the connection of people and ideas and all of that, and you're thinking, where do I even go to work, in coalitions? The good news is there's a lot of places, right, in the administration. Technically, the central place in the White House, Office of Public Liaison. Technically. And I say technically because, that's the office that's dedicated solely to outreach and to coalition building. But as we found, is you can actually do coalitions in various places around the White House. I actually did it from the Office of Legislative Affairs for my first 3 years under Trump-Pence. And then the 4th year was in the Office of the Vice President Pence, doing coalitions from there. And
I did it, almost a little bit swapped. I did it in my first 3 years in the Office of the Vice President, and in my last year at the National Security Council, where I just built different kinds of coalitions or used different kinds of coalitions.
Yeah, exactly. And there could be other offices that either maybe didn't have coalitions, but could have and should have. So I would just say that really any issue that you're interested or a type of work you're interested in doing, there could be a coalitions aspect to that office. And then, of course, certainly around the administration, right? Any department, agency either does have an actual coalitions office or probably should, or you can kind of create one, forge one out of whatever your existing job is, which in a way is what I did at Ledge Affairs.
And I think I give a lot of credit to Paul and for sort of expanding the definition of what coalitions is, right? Some people may call it outreach or engagement. At some point, it all kind of means the same thing, right? You're engaging people on the outside of government to influence policy and to help give us also good ideas on what to do. I mean, I'd say 90% of the good ideas that we had in the Trump-Pence administration came from people outside of government. They were, they were the ones spearheading these ideas and then selling them to us. And then we were able to take them internally. So, the idea of coalitions, development, and outreach and engagement really started in earnest probably in early 2000s on Capitol Hill, and it's just expanded and grown ever since then. And a lot of that credit goes to Paul Teller right
about
here.
that, but,
yeah,
you know,
no, that's true.
No, but great points, right? Because also, like, and if you're deciding, should I go into coalition, should I not? Just ask yourself, do you like kind of that intersection of people and ideas, right? Because if you're just an ideas person, like you're a great bookworm, researcher, policy wonk, fantastic, totally need that. You don't love the external part of it, then maybe not the coalitions thing is not, not right for you. But frankly, the opposite is true too, right? If you just want to go to happy hours and backslap and have fun, also great. But if there's not that connection to policy, if it's not that connection to something meaningful, substantive, action items, things to accomplish, then also maybe not the greatest, thing to go into in the administration.
And we both have a background in policy as well.
Yeah.
So to Paul's point, it's really important to be able to do both, right? Is to meet with these coalitions and be able to translate what it is that they're looking for and what they want into effective policy. So you've got to kind of have that background too.
So, okay, so let's say if, again, the viewer today decides, all right, I'm going into coalitions, I'm doing it, maybe you've even gotten a job and you're trying to think, what do I do on day one? What do we advise on that? Like day one of 2025 new Republican administration, like what should we say is like a good first thing to do or first few things to do or that kind of thing?
I think it's important to start small and make sure that you don't take on too much all at once, right? Figure out who your key coalition allies are and then make yourself available. Bring them in, right? Don't expect you always go to them. Bring them in. I think the feedback I got most often was how grateful people were that we included them and brought them in and listened to them. Just remember that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and God made that for a reason. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we speak. So it's tremendously important when we bring people in, and to do that right away, and first thing on your new job, but to listen to them. Let them have the opportunity to talk to you.
No, great point. Fantastic point. In fact, I would say, going back to the day one things that you may want to do, bring people in. I mean, if not literally on your first day, at least maybe day one is get your list together. Maybe you've even already done it before you stepped into the office, ideally. If you've done coalitions before or anything like that, bring your existing lists. If not, create new lists. And then, like I said, if not actual day one, day 2, 3, 4, 5, bring people in, show them around, show them the empty offices that haven't even been filled yet. Go to lunch in the cafeteria or whatever you could do early on. Bring people in. They so appreciate it, especially if you're at the White House. Really anywhere in the administration. But if you're in the White House, man, what a home court advantage, right? So just bringing people in builds that warmth.
You were so good at that. I wasn't as good at that, and I would watch you. You would bring people in and just tour them around, and I knew you didn't have the time to do it, right? But you were doing it anyway because the value there was just to make people feel like they were being heard and they mattered and they cared. Because again, these are the people that elected the president, and so without them and without their support, you're not going to be there again. But Paul did a really great job of bringing people in and making them feel really welcome. And that's part of your job too, because you are an extension and a reflection of the president and the vice president in that role.
No question. And you're right. Sometimes it's something small, right? It doesn't have to be come up with some big fancy event. We'll get to that. We'll build to that stuff. But in the early days when literally there's still boxes around or, people are hanging pictures on the wall, bring some key folks in and show them. Get them that early peek, let them take pictures that they, of course, then post on social media. It just builds that warmth. And again, ideally in the moment too, you're also saying, by the way, while I've got you here, what should we be doing on energy policy? Or what executive orders should we be repealing from the previous administration? Things like that. So it is substantive too. You're not just showing them boxes and things like that.
You'll probably get to this with another question, but I just want to make sure we don't forget that one of the other things that Paul was really great at was making introductions between coalition folks that he knew and making sure they knew the people in agencies, right? So to your point about energy, there was a coalitions person, there will be, at the Department of Energy. Well, they may not know all of the people Paul knows, right? Or that I know. And so he would always make those connections and relationships so that the coalitions person at the Department of Energy could really be the point person on energy policy stuff, then feed that into the White House, right? And that's how we were able to get so much done and build on it, right? Because one coalitions person can't do it all. You gotta divide and conquer.
Okay, so how should folks think about using these coalition connections to actually advancing the president's agenda, right? Because you and I could talk with folks till the cows come home, get the bowling alley going, go to the White House mess, have a nice lunch. But wait a minute, what does that actually do?
I think I've got a good example. So President Trump was the first president to ever address the March for Life in person.
Yes.
And when he decided to do that, we immediately started thinking about the optics of how we were going to make that look when he gave his remarks from the Rose Garden. And there are the traditional people that, of course, we invited to the speech, right? But I was trying to be creative about who we had stand behind him, because I knew that the TV was going to be on him, right? Pointed at him, and there'd be optics of who was going to be behind him. And so reached out to maybe one of these less traditional allies, though definitely an ally. But they are an umbrella organization for pregnancy centers. And we had moms and their babies who've been rescued from abortion by these pregnancy centers, come and stand behind the president. And it was incredible. I mean, people still talk about the optics of that.
100%.
There was like a little boy running up and down the aisle in the Rose Garden. His mom was standing right behind the president. And so that's another good use of these coalition relationships, is when you need to support the president and you need people to physically show up and be there on camera, these are the people you go to.
When you're thinking of who to bring in and when for a certain event, for again, a coffee, a bowling alley rental, whatever it is, you could look backwards and you can look forwards, meaning like you could think of it as a reward for something that coalition partner did in the past already. Or you could think, this person could use a little extra massaging because we're going to maybe rely on this person for a future battle. Or maybe he or she hasn't done quite all that much to help just yet, but there's a little glimmer of hope there. Let's bring that person in. Make a prominent, image for that person for he or she to use in his or her own fundraising, maybe for her organization. It all kind of works together that way and things like that. So, don't think it's just about the past. It could also be someone who, hasn't been as much of a partner yet and, do it for the future kind of thing.
And if you're really paying attention to what Paul is saying, none of this is transactional. And this is a town full of people who are transactional in nature, right? You do something for me, I give you something back, and it's strictly just like that, right? It's all business and that's it. This is not like that at all. Right. This is relational, right? These are people who you truly need to get to know and build relationships with. I mean, these are people who are some of the closest in our lives to us, right? Yeah. That we still call and count on for stuff outside of work, right? They've become our friends and our companions. And that's something to remember too, that you don't ever want this to be transactional. You want it to really be relational.
Great points on making it about relationships, not just, quid pro quo in the moment. Of course, everybody helps everybody, that kind of thing, but it's based on sincere, genuine relationships and stuff like that. And here's, I guess, how you then leverage that into policy and other accomplishments, other action items. You've built that trust, right? And that allows you to say, hey, any chance you could issue a statement in support of the bill that the president is supporting, any chance you could help block this amendment moving through Congress, any chance you could show up in an event that's helping the president, any chance you could, whatever it is, you build that trust. And then you're using kind of your outside game, the outside coalition forces, to help your inside game, inside government. So it isn't, again, just for fun. It is for actually advancing, policy goals on the Hill, off the Hill, in the states, wherever.
And so many times our colleagues would come to us and say like, well, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but who's going to come support us when we do it, right? And Paul and I and others who were coalitions folks, we were able to bring those lists and be able to say, if you go out and do this and you put your name on the line for this, here are the folks who are going to show up and support you.
Yeah. And if you've built these relationships in advance, built the trust that we've been talking about, and also you could get it done fast, right? Because let's face it, not everything is something you could plan for weeks in advance. Sarah is especially known for like the overnight planning of massive events where at 7 p.m. it's like, yeah, Sarah, 9 a.m. tomorrow we need 50 people on the White House lawn. Oh, really?
Got it.
Fantastic. Okay. You can't do that unless you have the pre-existing relationship, pre-existing trust, and you've already been working together. So that even goes back to your day one action items. Who are you building trust with right off the bat so that when you actually really have an ask and it's urgent, oh my God, I'm so sorry, it's time sensitive. Right. Can you show up at the White House tomorrow with almost no notice? And by the way, say these 3 talking points.
Right.
It's because you've built those trusts from day one, right
Yep.
from the beginning and stuff like that.
And remember, not everything happens in DC either. Sometimes often there were times we were on the road and we had to throw together an event and we needed people there. And we needed people there to say certain things and do certain things. And so remember to keep your coalitions outside of DC as
Absolutely.
well, right? So state networks are tremendously important. And then just individual contacts on the ground in the states you're going to be going to and just all over, right? They may not get utilized as often, but they're just as important.
That's like an epic point, right? We
Yeah.
definitely should
Yeah.
stay on that for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because again, especially if you're in the White House, but this is true for agencies, cabinet secretaries travel as well. But very often, Sarah or I would get notice like with a day and a half in advance, the vice president or the president is going to Wisconsin, is going to tour this factory. And by the way, would be great to have some workers in hard hats standing behind and meeting with sheriffs after. Okay, how are we going to do that? So it's not to say that you have to know the sheriffs and, the construction workers, whatever. Do you know the people who know those folks, right? And it's the state coalitions, or a lot of times even the national DC groups and leaders have state affiliates and branches that you could say, hey, I'm calling you here in Washington, D.C., but can you call your Wisconsin branch really quick and help me get these folks out and that kind of thing. And for feedback too, like you were saying, more listening than talking. So sometimes you say, who do you think we should have at this event in Wisconsin? We don't have a fixed idea. Who would be best to have? Who would be good to help? Who would be good to work with? So again, all of these things being planned in advance.
In a perfect world, but very often it was, hey, we're going in a day or two. What can you put together?
On a second. Okay, so how about best practices? What do you think are some pieces of advice we should give for folks who, again, are jumping into coalitions and, could use a little advice from the pro of how to get it best done?
Maybe it's just because of the station I am in my life now, but I'm thinking to myself, like, you got to give it everything, right? It's a 24/7, 7-day-a-week kind of thing. You got to eat, sleep, and dream about it, right? There will be another time in your life to do the other stuff, right? But when you've got this opportunity to be impactful and influential like this and to really help the president and the whole team, you just got to give it your all, right? And so late nights, lots of emails, lots of creative thought, not all of it has to be done from your desk, right? Yeah. You could go home, but keep working, right? And make sure that those events for the next day or 2 days later are planned and you've got the right people there. But you gotta really commit and give it your all.
Yeah, no question. I think what we also got good at was creating lists. Lots of lists, right?
Yes.
Think of lists for every possible thing. Things you may never need, make the list because you will need it.
Yep.
Divide it up in every possible way or do it on an Excel grid or some way that it's sortable, divisible in different ways you couldn't have even anticipated. But just have all kinds of lists. And that's not only good for inbound stuff, if you need people to come in and help, but if you're just pushing something out. The president issued an executive order today on XYZ. Who should hear about it? Well, these particular groups would be most interested in hearing about it, maybe amplifying it, otherwise taking an action. If you have the list already set, you don't have to build it. You don't have to think, who do I need to send this to? You just, it's going to my energy producers in the Mountain West list.
Right, that's specific. You want to
yeah.
get that specific about
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
and
it's crazy.
you can ask anybody. Paul Tyler is the king of this, right? And you can't just like create that out of thin air. So
Yeah, build it as you go. Right?
build it as you
Yeah.
go. Find a system, but make sure your system works and that you can, sort it, because that's going to be key.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I to this day, I do that. If I get, you meet someone at a conference, get a business card, go back and put that person on as many relevant lists as possible. Like, let's see, she's a female activist, she's a youth activist, also works in energy and healthcare, and used to be a state legislator. Well, get her on all those lists, because you never know which one you'll need when and in a moment's notice, that kind of thing. Okay, so what are some other best practices that we could tell these good folks who are watching our video today, things that bring people in, make them feel involved, especially like between action items? In other words, obviously, like you say, when you're inviting someone to stand at an event or bringing them in for a round table or something, great. But what happens when it's just a quiet day where I don't have a specific ask? Is there still something we could be doing, or you did, or that kind of thing?
I think you and I both published, whether it was a weekly email or I don't know how frequently we did it. I can't remember, but sort of just an update email that went to everybody, right? So it kept everybody in the loop, even on issues that maybe they didn't care about, right? But it was a general update, so they felt like they were part of what we were doing, right? That we would bring them in when it was their issue and thing they cared about, but also that they just had an open door to us and to the coalition's folks in the White House, and sort of had the like they were in the know, Yeah. And so we were always doing that and making sure that they felt like they were part of the team. That's really important. And you can do that from the White House, from an agency, from wherever you sit, just making sure people feel like they're in the loop. They will, they'll appreciate that so much and be much more receptive in the future when you need them.
That's a great point, because I think we won't name any names. Maybe some people in the White House were very good at telling folks what to do, on the outside. We need you to do this, need you to do that, and very little kind of inbound stuff. Yeah. What do you think we should do? What's your opinion on this? So Sarah's making a great point. So if you could do some of that, especially in advance of the actual need, and they'll appreciate not only you meeting with them, but then saying, we're thinking of rolling out this initiative. What do you think? How should we roll it out? How would you frame it? Could you participate? Could you amplify it? Have specific questions and ask and get feedback, makes people feel involved, and frankly, gives you great ideas. A lot of times these ideas, like you said, inbound, we feed them into either the policy shop, communication shop, other places throughout the administration, throughout the White House, and it becomes what the White House or the administration does. So great ideas.
I think, again, it's important to remember that you are a reflection of the administration and of the president in everything you do, everything you say, everything you write. Never put anything in an email that you wouldn't want to see on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, right? Be genuine and humble in your words and your actions. There are opportunities sometimes to make some of these people feel really unique and special, and whether that's they're getting married and you get a correspondence letter from the president to them just to wish them best of luck, or they have a child and you get a letter like that. And you want to be, you want to pick and choose when you do that and use that sparingly but appropriately, right? Those are really great ways to make people feel like they are part of the team.
Yeah, fantastic point. That your interaction with folks doesn't always have to be so serious, policy heavy, that kind of thing. Some of that should be, obviously. But yeah, some could just be, you just got married, or, you just had, I don't know, just something about the person's personal life. They just went on a great beach vacation. You check in with them after. How was the beach? Right. You're just building a connection. You're building a warmth. You're building a trust that you could then call on later for the more serious action items, and things along those lines.
I think that this goes back to what I said earlier about being on 24/7, but Paul was incredible at giving people his cell phone number. I was always a little bit more hesitant about that maybe, but they always knew how to get a hold of us, right? And any hour of the day could call, text, email us, whatever it was. And even if they never used that, again, it just made them feel like they were part of the team. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have people who are bought in like that. And so, being thoughtful about how you share your contact and with whom, and how you encourage them to call you or reach out to you when they need you or when they want to engage.
I think what we found too is mix and match how you interact with someone. I'll leave the name out, but I can think of a well-known activist who once told me that he noticed I only invited him to a certain type of roundtable on a certain kind of issue. And he was right. And I was like, you know what? My apologies. You're right. That I've kind of, he fell into a little bucket with me.
Yeah.
And so I had to be mindful. Oh no, we should also do a one-on-one lunch or a press event, not just a private off-the-record roundtable or other type things. So think about that too, how you can almost have a menu of options of things that you could offer different people at different times, and make sure you're ordering off different parts of the menu, throughout different parts of the year, that kind of thing. And by the way, for everyone watching today, you shouldn't feel embarrassed at all to either check with us or others who have done this before, right? I mean, this is, as you could tell, more of an art than a science, right? And there'll be tools and issues and techniques that might be different either for your personality, for the administration, wherever you're exactly working. But yet there's also a lot of common threads and similarities. Happy to walk them through you and, seek out mentors, especially if you haven't done this before. But even if you had, but this is the first time in an administration, first time in a White House, ask folks, for updated best practices, or what do you think of this, or how should I do that?
I think in order to accomplish that successfully too, you need a partner or a team to do this, right? No one person can be a perfectly successful coalitions director or a coalitions person who does everything. It's impossible. There's too many coalitions, there's too many people, you could still do that 24/7, 7 days a week that I encouraged you to do and still never get it all done. So I know that when I was in the office of the vice president, I had a deputy who was, ridiculous that she was called a deputy because she was better than me and everything, right? But her relationships were different than mine, and so we tag teamed it, and because of that, I think we were successful. So, if you have the opportunity to talk to your boss and say, I could really use a partner in this, a deputy or a second person or an intern or whatever it might be. I utilized our White House interns all the time to help me make lists, keep lists. One of them is still, he's better known in some circles now than I am. In military, spouse circles, right? He's the guy people still go to. So you just remember that you need help too, and not any one person can do all of it.
Yeah, and great point to emphasize is, play to your strengths, right? If there's something you're already good at or known for or have great connections with, lean into that, right? Don't feel like you have to just do things that are totally, out of your wheelhouse. Going back to Rudy Olivo, my deputy when I was in the vice president's office, his family's from the Dominican Republic. He knew Spanish.
Right.
He should connect with, Hispanic coalitions. Why should I do that when you have someone right there who knows Spanish? So play to your strengths and go from there. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get out of your comfort zone as well, but also play, to those strengths, those pre-existing relationships, pre-existing contacts, and just like who you are, as a person, that kind of thing. Okay, so actually let's talk about what happens when maybe a relationship gets a little rocky, right? We've all had that. Someone is maybe not thrilled with either the administration, us personally, maybe even a fellow coalition partner, whatever it is. The person is not thrilled with something. There's some damage, right? Best practice for smoothing that over. What do you think? Or what have you done?
Yeah, honest adult conversations are really important, to call them in and to give them the time to voice their concern, right? Whether it's with you personally or with the administration.
No, that's right. Dealing with it immediately, right?
Yeah.
Listening, like going back to
Right.
an earlier point, right?
Yep.
2 ears, 1 mouth. So listening more. There may be opportunities to pivot and say, I understand you're not happy with this policy, but can I also show you what we're doing on this policy? Or by the way, let me give you a little insider scoop on this thing we're rolling out next week. I'm going to give you an early heads up. So hopefully there's make goods that you could do to make the person still feel heard, involved. Yes, you are listening to that person's perspective and taking advantage. Sometimes it's even just, hey, like you said, let's sit down and hash it out. How about over lunch at the White House mess or at some other fancy cafeteria in some agency building? Use the tools that you have available to smooth it over, and offer real solutions. I mean, it's good to nod. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you've seen I'm a nodder, right? I sit here and nod. It's just I can't help it. But nod and then say, and here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I'm going to do for you, and here's what we can do together in the future, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's kind of a good best practice, which in a way is not all that different from human relations outside of this arena, outside of work, right? Pretty similar kind of stuff.
Just a reminder again that you are a representation of the president and of the team. So
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's going to be on your shoulders to kind of take the heat,
Yeah.
so that the president isn't the one who has to take it. That's part of what you're signing up for.
Yeah. No, that's right. Sometimes just absorbing it and apologizing even, right? I'm so sorry. You are right. I should have roped you into that. Because that's a common thing as a coalitions person. Get ready for that, right?
Yep.
Sarah knows better than
Yep.
anybody. Someone will call you up, someone very important.
Right.
Why wasn't I invited to that? Why did so-and-so get invited
And
when
I
such
didn't?
and such wasn't and I wasn't? Yes. So there will be
Yep.
those moments. And again, a lot of times it's just, sometimes there is a legitimate explanation. We only had 5 slots. We had to fill it with people who had not been in recently. You had been in recently, Mr. So-and-so. So sometimes there's legitimate reasons. Sometimes there's just kind of not, and you just have to take it. And I'm so sorry, we'll get you in for the next thing. Let's grab lunch, whatever the make good is. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes you just have to absorb it on behalf of the president and vice president. And, So let's see. So maybe time to wrap up. Any closing thoughts for these again kind folks who've watched today and hopefully jumping into the coalition world?
Call us. Let us know how we can help you and support you. It's an incredible job. You're gonna have some of the best moments of your life in this job and things you'll never forget. I can't believe I'm going to give this advice because I didn't take it when somebody gave it to me, but keep a journal. Journal of the things that you do and the people you meet. Take pictures when you can and when it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate.
Yep.
But just try to remember those things, because one day you'll look back on it and be like, wow, remember that time I met so-and-so and got to do X, Y, and Z, and just enjoy the time that you do it. And again, do it with humility.
Yeah, fantastic advice, as always. And yeah, I would just say, just realize that coalitions allows you to touch just about every area of wherever you're working. Again, if it's the White House, if it's a certain administrative agency, department, whatever it is, don't be shy to say, well, that's policy, I won't talk to the policy people, or that's communications, they know what they're doing. It's not to say they don't know what they're doing, but coalitions strengthens everybody else's work. And so you should also be doing some internal kind of networking and partnerships so that you can not only amplify their work, they can amplify what you're doing, you can work together, because sometimes you may be bringing in coalition partners to come to a media event, as you talked about, or maybe it's a policy roundtable, or just other, maybe it's to discuss a legal action that's about to be taken, some sort of lawsuit, whatever it is. You'll want to make sure that you're partnering internally with the correct people, and you have every right to, because there will be some folks, and Sarah knows what I'm talking about, who will try to put coalitions in this little box, right over. You're a coalitions person, you just stay over here. No, you absolutely should be connecting with everything and everybody throughout the agency or department you're working in.
And if they're smart, they'll include you, because
Yep.
again, these are the people that voted for the president and are going to be the reason that they are reelected. And so if they're smart, they'll know to include coalitions.
Right, no, exactly. And obviously we don't want to butt in needlessly. There are some
Right.
considered private. But in general, I'm just saying, just know that what you're hopefully about to undertake is a very broad job with broad reach and very meaningful, because you could really advance the issues, the cause of the administration in such a meaningful, tangible way.
Thank you all for taking the time to listen to us today. I hope that it was beneficial and that you learned a lot. We both look forward to all that you're going to accomplish and succeed in your roles. And just remember that we're here to support you.
Yeah, please be in touch. Happy to help.